Hello, my sweets. Welcome back. Today we'll be making tomato sauce. Yes, I know for those of you that have gardens, you have plenty of tomatoes sitting around that you don't know what to do with it. One thing I don't know how to do is garden. So I get my tomatoes from Restaurant Depot, and usually it is not as ripened as I want it to be. So I'll let it sit, checking on it every 2 to 3 days to see if it is ready. Then I go ahead to use it. As you saw, it wasn't this beautiful red when I got it, but look at it now. And I like to wash it thoroughly just in case it has any pesticides on it. Okay, so this is totally optional. This is how I like to do it, and I don't have a stopper, so I use the cling film or plastic wrap to stop the water from moving. I added some salt and vinegar, stirred everything around, and I allowed it sit in the water for about an hour. You can just let it sit until all the salt melts away to ensure that it is well cleaned. Okay, again, this is my choice. So once it is beautifully cleaned to my preference, I'll get out the bag, allow the water to go, and then give it a final rinse before we get started with our sauce. Look at our tomatoes, beautiful and ready. So at this point, we're going to cut it up to get rid of some of the seed. At times it is impossible to get rid of all of the seed, but you can try because these tomatoes are super juicy and we do not want to be cooking them forever. Okay, so you can put your finger in it to get it out, or you can squeeze it right out. And I like to get rid of the core, especially with these huge tomatoes. The core is super humongous. So there are 3 ways you can do that. You can cut your tomatoes into half or quarters like this, cut all around the core and get rid of it. Okay, and you cut the tomatoes to your preferred sizes. I think big chunks will do just fine. The second way you can get rid of the core is to use your paring knife to just kind of pry it right out of that spot and then cut it. And then the final way you can cut it this way, again, squeeze. Do you see how beautiful these tomatoes are? They're super red, and that is just how I wanted it. That's why I let it sit. It actually sat for about a week, but you must check on it, otherwise it'll begin to go bad, because in that dark and cozy box, bacteria will also be enjoying it. Okay, and you can also cut around the core again just like this, and then we'll transfer our tomatoes into our pot, and without adding any water or whatsoever, cover it up and bring it to a boil. If you do not cover it, it may begin to burn before releasing any juices, but when you cover it, it creates steam, which will help the moisture in the tomatoes to begin to release into your pot. Okay, and with the seed, I'm just going to put it through the strainer from the beginning like we did. Just get all the juice out, and this is your fresh tomato juice that you can enjoy. But I have a recipe on how I make my homemade super delicious tomato juice, which will be coming up next, so watch out for that. I like my fresh pepper sauce, so I'm going to be storing some of the fresh tomatoes in my freezer just like this, just in case I ran out of fresh tomatoes when I want to enjoy some shitoke komi papakue. I'll have that handy for me. It is totally optional. You can cook everything. Okay, back to check on our tomatoes. Look at this, without adding any water or whatsoever. Look at all that juice. I'm going to give it a good stir and add the rest of the tomatoes that I have to it. Now, if you have a big pot, then all the tomatoes can go in it, but this pot wasn't big enough, so I added it bit by bit until everything fits. But once you add the final amount, just bring it to a boil and do not cover it again, because the longer you cover it, the more juices will form. We are making 100% tomato sauce. We are not adding anything to it, because I had so many questions in my previous tomato sauce video. You do not have to add anything to it. You can actually make it pure tomato sauce. Now, while your tomatoes cook down, you can begin to skim out some of the juices, because otherwise it'll take forever to cook down. Unless, of course, you want it to be more juicy, then just leave it and cook until your tomatoes are done. So once I got some of the juices out, I stirred periodically until it was at the thickness that I was going for. I don't want this to be too thick, but I also didn't want it to be too light. So we'll turn the fire off and allow it cool completely. If you do this in the evening, then you can leave it to cool on the stove top overnight. And then using my immersion blender, I'm going to blend it to my choice. You can make it chunky, you can make it smooth, just like mine. It's totally up to you. If you don't have an immersion blender, please feel free to use a regular blender. It will work just as well. And now we would be storing them. And I want my tomato sauce in all different sizes. So I have this huge ice cube trays that I'll be storing it in. I use the smaller one for tomato paste. So using this big one worked out perfectly. If you don't have ice cube trays, feel free to store them in bags like this or Ziploc bags. But I feel for tomato sauce, these type of bags are perfect. But I have not found this in the US. I brought this from Ghana. So if you're in Ghana, you can use this. If you're in the US, I haven't found it. Just go ahead and use these containers that I got from the dollar store, because they are just perfect. At this point, we will transfer it into our freezer and have it frozen solid just like this, and then take them out of the ice cube trays, transfer it into Ziploc bags, and keep it in our freezer. I love these because I can make a lot of stew or just a little bit of stew without having to thaw a whole tub of tomato sauce. If you've enjoyed me until now, I do want to thank you so very much. Why not let me know where you're watching from, and I'll give you a special too in our next recipe. Also, share to somebody if this was useful to you. Until I see you in the next one, stay safe, keep loving each other, and remember that the love of God and family is life's greatest blessing. And guys, ke unamini uchemi sweet mahabotu. Bye, y'all. Sending money any other way? Tap Send is the way to go. Download it today and use our short code SWEETTEAM to get a $15 bonus when you send your first 50. So the person you're sending it to get an extra $15 on us.